everybody. My dad thinks his podcast is amazing, so please subscribe, give it 5 stars or whatever, and maybe he'll finally stop talking about it. Anyways, welcome to Sobriety.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Sober as Fuck. We got another special guest this week, but first I want to remind everybody, please make sure whether you're watching us on Spotify or YouTube or just listening on Apple, please make sure you rate, review, subscribe, hit the notification bell as Lily always tells us at the end of the podcast, and leave any comments that you want for the show.
And share.
And please share the damn thing, will you?
Mm-hmm. Sharing is probably the biggest thing so that other people know we're out there.
Yes, please do. We appreciate it. Anyway, today I want to welcome in someone I've known literally from the very beginning of my sobriety journey. She was a former coach. She ran meetings with me before, extremely early meetings, which is what I really enjoyed during my workouts in the morning. So let's welcome in my good friend, Shannon Walls. Good morning,
Guys.
Shannon. How are you?
Hi. I love your shirt.
Yes.
Thank you.
We didn't realize
I love Christmas.
Green and red on this one.
As do we.
Oh, how are y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing very
Doing good. We have some snow out here right now. It's a first, so it's very, very Christmassy today.
Nice.
Oh, yes. I love that.
Me too.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We appreciate it. I was just kind of doing a little intro about you and how I met you, obviously through Reframe. I always want to call you Coach Shannon, but I got to stop doing that. But you were like the queen of the early morning meetings. So you've always had that, early 6:30 a.m. meeting. So when I was working out, it was nice to be able to listen to you and your insights on everything. And what I really enjoyed about you in your meetings was you always put a different spin on things, which was really cool. I know you used to say like, hey, bring your dog to a meeting, stuff like that. And I always thought that was so neat. I never had a chance to do it because it was so early in the morning, but I always thought that was really cool of you to do, just kind of make things different and mix it up from the normal mundane, meetings we always had.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that. Yeah, I always tried to reinvent the wheel on the meetings because I knew that a lot of people, we had people that were getting on from Washington. They were getting up at 3:30 a.m. to come into that meeting. Mm-hmm. So it had to be a little bit entertaining too. Or else they wouldn't come back.
Well, you definitely had the entertainment factor down. That was for sure. So I know you're about to come up on 3 years sober, which congratulations, by the way,
That's
coming
awesome.
up very quick. That's amazing.
Thank you.
But what was it that made you change your relationship with alcohol?
Well, I think that I had wanted to do that for a long time. And without, taking 3 hours to go through the history, it all really started to kick in for me. I went on a couple mission trips. I started when my son was in high school. I did their youth group because I wanted them to have, a safe place to get together. And we did a couple mission trips. And one of them, we were on Pine Ridge Reservation down in South Dakota. And one of my best friends went with us. He builds houses, so he was there to help with the projects. And he was in AA, and I knew that he had been in AA for a long time. And I had hated my relationship with alcohol for a very long time, even before that. And I thought it was so interesting that somebody I knew he was very open about it. And we did every day, because I always do a devotional. We would do his AA devotional and my devotional together. And that was about 10 years before, and this all, well, maybe not that long, but it was quite a while before I actually kicked it. So it started clear back then. And then it was just finding my way, because AA wasn't my way. I loved it for him, but that didn't resonate with me. So I had to find my way.
what was like was it a mindset change, or what was it that,
Yeah.
obviously, around the holidays, so you started on, I think you said it was January 1st of
Yeah.
22.
It's so
So I
funny
didn't know
too.
if it was, something that happened, or just you woke up and said, you know what, screw it, this is it, I'm done.
So many in my group started January 3rd because my first day was actually on a Saturday, and everybody's like, well, we're not starting until Monday. So I was really
Oh,
excited
gotcha.
that I did, at 11:59, I had a sip of champagne with my family were all together. And I had tried the 1st of November. I had my granddaughter over. I watch her a lot, and we have. She's just been such a blessing and joy to us. And I noticed that I was starting to drink for anything, for any reason, and it wasn't like I was sitting and drinking 2 or 3 bottles of wine, but it's just she was coming over. I was watching her, and I was happy. I was excited to see her. I loved watching her, and I got out and had a glass of wine, and I thought, man, that's not good. So the 1st of November, I said, I'm giving up wine for the holidays. And that lasted about a week. And I downloaded Annie Grace's program, which is a 30-day alcohol-free program. And I was trying to do all the rules, cutting back 7 a week, or, just drinking 2 or 3 days a week. None of that was working. And I was very frustrated with myself. And I said, I can't make these rules. These rules just don't work. I have to have it be an all or nothing thing. And so the first of the year, I said, I'm going to do sober January and my husband did it with me. He still drinks, but we call him the cutback kid. So he's kind of, just holistically gone into that. But January 1st, I said, I'm going to do the 30 days. And then after that, I wasn't ready to quit. I really liked it, but I was scared and I didn't want to stay forever. So I did the 1,000-hour dry, which is 42 days. And I wasn't ready to quit. And that went right into Lent. And I said, I'm going to do this for Lent. And while I was in Lent, I said, I don't want to drink anymore ever. I mean, I just knew. And that was a big one. That was a big one.
That is eerily similar to my journey, believe it or not. On December 1st, I kind of unknowingly realized, well, it was before December 1st, but December 1st was sort of the milestone that I realized, like, I haven't had a drink in 6 months. And mine was the same. Like, I just realized we were going on vacation or being at the house or whatever. And I never was a multi-bottle drinker or anything like that either. And I could still moderate if I wanted to, but we were on vacation and I thought, I have a headache, my stomach hurts, like my husband and my daughter are out frolicking on the beach and I'm tired. And, I think that same as you, I just realized that alcohol didn't bring me anything good or positive. It didn't necessarily bring anything bad for me. And I think that can be tricky for a lot of people because you think, well, the only people who need to stop drinking are people who are alcoholics. I'm using, air quotes here, or have a drinking problem or have gotten DUIs or, their marriage is on the rock. We like all things, we put it in a box. When in reality, it really is a personal relationship you have with alcohol. And I had the same thing. Like, why do I feel the need to partake in this activity when really it doesn't do anything of substance or value? So I get that. And I was the same way. Like, I was like, I think I'm just going to not drink for a few months, I just kind of want to cleanse my body of it. My belly hurts. I get migraines. And then as it went into the fall, I was like, well, I just don't want to drink. Or we would go out to a restaurant and, I'd be like, I just really don't want a glass of wine or I don't want the margarita. Like, it wasn't even like I'm not drinking. It was like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
And then we were talking like a week before our last podcast. And I said, I really do think this is a forever thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, are you sure that's a big statement? And I was like, yeah, like, I just don't want it. I do not want it. So I completely understand that journey, how, you get addicted to not having it. You're like, I feel good. I'm clear headed. I sleep better. Like I didn't really have a problem before, but I also didn't realize how much it really was dampening me. And same thing, like you're with your granddaughter or your people and you realize like, I don't need this. This is dumb. So I resonate with that a lot.
I think, it really was something that was changing too, the way I was reacting to it. I was starting that perimenopause phase, and I noticed that if I was having a glass or two of wine, if I had more than like 1 or 2 glasses of wine, I could not remember, exact details of conversations or what was going on television. And I felt like that brain fog was to the point where I was like, this is not healthy. Because most people can, have 1 or 2 drinks and not go to that. But I think that the years of me drinking to a blackout state had, toned my body into that where, it just was happening sooner and sooner. And that scared me too. Because as you get older, you have to worry about your brain health. And I want to be around a long time. I just had my first grandchild. I'm still expecting the other 2 to bring me some more joy later on. And I was like, this is not good. It just wasn't good. And even my doctor had told me that, as you get older, your relationship with alcohol changes, the way that your body makeup, is able to process it as you start going through those hormone changes, which I didn't. I had no idea. I just...
Well, when you're in your 20s and you're drinking, you're just like, woo, this feels great. Yeah. And you might have a little hangover, but whatever. I get that. There's a whole study around women and hormones and alcohol and perimenopause. So yeah, we hear that from a lot of the women who are guests on the show too. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, that's
what I was going to ask you about, like what really changed when you cut it off. I mean, obviously there's not a change, day one, but kind of like as you've gone through it, 6 months, 9 months, year, where did you really notice changes in, since you cut this off, this has gotten better, or this has improved, or I don't do this anymore kind of stuff? What's changed in your life since then?
I think a lot of people have this preconceived notion when they stop drinking that a lot more is going to change right away. They're going to lose weight. So I did not lose weight. I gained about 20 pounds and my sugar cravings kicked in. And, you don't go right away and have like these unbelievable amounts of 8 to 10 hours of sleep. That does not happen. The nap is your best friend. So it takes a while to start seeing the progress, but you have to be aware of the fact that, just weird things. Like I noticed fall so much more that first year than I'd ever noticed it before. Like when I was taking walks, I was the leaves and the trees, and I was like, I fell in love with Ohio for the first time ever. My emotions were a lot more crisp, and they weren't dulled. So if I was upset, I was really upset, but I had a reason to be, and I could articulate it. I wasn't fumbling around with words. And if I was happy, I was really happy. And I found my happy days were a lot more intense than my sad days. And I became a lot more of a positive person, more aware of others and not so me-centered. And I think that, my kids don't ever say that they think that I ever had a problem with alcohol, which is a blessing to me. But they also, especially from my youngest one to my oldest one, my youngest one, I got sober when she was a senior in high school. My oldest one tells me, I wish I could have this version of you back then when I was younger. I was like, yeah, I know. But they didn't really always get, why my moods, would sometimes go, from 0 to 100 so fast. And I think part of it was because of, drinking. You've been brought up in that mommy wine culture. And what do you do when you're upset? Well, you drink. Well, what happens when you drink? Well, then all of a sudden your temperament flares and you're just not yourself. And that's what people told you to do for everything. I even had a doctor tell me, now this was back in the day when I think I was pregnant with my second. that it was okay to drink if I just had one during my pregnancy. And when I was trying to breastfeed and there were some issues with that, they said that there would be no problem with me having a glass of wine in order to help with that, letdown. And I just can't even believe even the doctors didn't know what they should have known.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mommy wine culture. We talked about this on a previous podcast. Is like, it is so real, and it's so relatable in a way that until you separate yourself from that, you really like believe it. Like you really believe like, I am exhausted and I have earned this. That's what it makes you believe, right? Like, I am tired. I've done all these productive things. Like, I'm keeping a house, or have a career. I'm taking care of a child. Like, you're like, you've been so productive. You're checking all these boxes. So what's a glass of wine going to hurt? You've deserved it. And you believe that until you take yourself away from it. And then you're like, what the hell was I thinking? Sitting around getting drunk with my baby. Like, good Lord, that's terrible.
Yeah.
To pivot, something I wanted to ask you is, and you may have already been prepared to ask this, is, so how did you find the sober community, reframe, get into coaching? Like, what went from I'm not going to drink anymore to I'm going to coach others and help them on their journey to sobriety? Because that's something I really admire. How did you make that leap?
Well, I had, she's my very best friend, and she lost her son to an overdose a few years back.
I'm so sorry.
And that was it was just so traumatic. And I had taken my kids to church, and there was an organization there that was asking for help, and it was a faith-based recovery house for men. So I started volunteering for them before I quit drinking. And there was some, really, it wasn't just alcohol. There was some real hardcore, I was around all of it. And I felt bad because I was still going home and drinking at night. And then I also had, some issues in my family. I have a brother that has alcohol issues, and my dad, who's been sober now for over a year. He started drinking when he was about 14. So I had that in my background. And then my friend that lost her son quit drinking. And I thought, gosh, how strong is she that she could do that and feel it? She felt like she needed it, that she owed it to him to feel the feels and not numb out. And so I thought, well, I found, then I started doing the reframe, which I found, sorry, this is kind of like back and forth, but it's
that's
I'll
okay.
get to the point. During COVID, I was listening to podcasts, and I heard a young woman speak. Her name was Kayla Lyons, who was one of the co-founders of Reframe back in the day, and she coined the 1,000 Hours Dry. And I fell in love with her and her, just her, everything about her. I started following her on Instagram, and she would talk about Reframe. And so I went ahead and I joined Reframe after the first of the year. And so I had that. And then I'd done a couple other things. Sober Sister was another one that I did, which was a 21-day reset. And I decided I wanted to get training to specifically help these people where I had volunteered before. I wanted to have the things in my wheelhouse to be able to talk to my brother, talk to my dad, talk to the people that, that had been at the Alpha House, where I knew what I was talking about. And I fell in love with coaches on Reframe too. And I thought, man, I want to do that. So I got my peer support certification very early on, but I could kind of do that because of my volunteer background with the Alpha House. And then as soon as I could, I went in and did my certification for life and recovery counseling. And then I also did for eating addiction. And I came on Reframe as soon as I could to start coaching and giving back, because I wanted to be able to help people and help them understand that they shouldn't be ashamed of this. And just really, I just wanted them to have a friend, because if you're in the situation where you quit drinking and everyone around you is doing it, and you don't have, that AA group, or you don't have that friend that doesn't really, drink, and you don't have anybody to bounce that off of. Like, I was lucky, I had my friends that had given up in the past. You need a friend. I came on Reframe, and 4 of the coaches lived in my area, and I was like, guys, we've got to do lunch. We need to get coffee. I mean, I basically forced their hand. I was like, you guys are meeting up with me whether you like it or not. And then I tried to start having the meetups for the people that were in Reframe, that were local, or that would come to where we lived in Cleveland. Because I think that's so instrumental to getting better. I don't think this is an individual sport. I think it is a team effort.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a lot? Sorry. Is that a lot?
No, that was
perfect.
Hey, on this podcast, the more the better.
Yes,
I mean, that's what this format is for, is, we want to destigmatize addiction, alcoholism, mental health, like all of the, whatever you self-identify, right? Whatever it is, we tell our daughter this, I tell Ryan this, like, you don't need to be fixed because you're not broken.
Exactly.
You simply just don't understand how your brain functions and how it miscommunicates with your nervous system. And then, we're not therapists. We don't try to be doctors. And then, maybe there's some trauma there. It all sort of branches off, and there are derivatives of things. But that's exactly what we wanted to do, right? Is create a platform and have people like you on here talking and reminding people that we understand what the world sells you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we get it. But you're not broken. Yeah. You're not a bad person. It's not a black and white issue. Like anything else, it's a spectrum, and the world is typically somewhere in the gray area. And what I love most about, like, including you, everybody who's been on the podcast, is it is not this mission to, tell people that they shouldn't drink or they shouldn't use, or like try to coerce them into doing anything. It is simply this is a safe space. Even if you're still drinking, even if you're still using, you have a fundamental human right to be respected and loved and cared for. And your value does not begin and end with any struggle that you have. That your value is you as a human being. And what I've seen is the majority of time people don't see the value within themselves.
Right.
It has nothing to do with what's going on around them. It is that they don't value themselves. So having like coaches like you and, Reframe, and I love seeing the branches of AA. And I'll say that because that really was sort of the root, the seed that was planted. Yep. So though it is kind of an archaic thing at this point for some, not for others, just like we're talking about religion, just like with the Bible, like if you take the overall message and you put it into practice, it's going to work.
Yeah.
But you have to work it, and you have to stay true to it and pick the things that work for you. And I just love that. I love that, you're like, I want to give back to this. I love that you were volunteering at a men's house too. Women typically help women, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm all for like women helping women, but I find it so intriguing that, you volunteered at a women's house. That had to have been a different experience for you too. And I'm sure it was for the men there as well, because, men are sold this whole story of don't be vulnerable and don't, you're not an alcoholic or you don't have a problem with drinking. Men drink beer and bourbon, like we get these like gender biases. So how was that? Like when you first started volunteering, were there other women volunteering? How were you received? Did you find any struggle or anything that you learned and gained out of that experience specifically?
Well, it was nice because they did not have a set program because they were not government funded. So they actually were a house that also had their own counseling center. So the men would go to the counseling center during the day. And I helped doing where you would call in and try to get a bed. Or I would try to get people that were like transitioning. They were still in jail and they were trying to find a place to get out and to get into the house. And I wasn't able to do it very long because COVID happened. And this family, they're just a wonderful family. They lived with the men. They had 4 children at the time. Now I think they have 6. And their house, was together with the people that were in the house. It was run as a family. It was run at faith-based. The men went to church. They had Christmas with the family. And it filled my soul to be a part of that organization. And when I originally did this, I thought that I would go back to doing that, but they've gotten really big. I mean, they have a camp now and everything. If you Google the Alpha House, they just, in our area, they have women's houses. That's not just men. And I transitioned to doing Reframe because I could do it from home. It was still in the fact that I have parents that are older, and I'm not subjected to all of the, the COVID, all that, because I can just talk to you. And I was able to reach a lot of people. It was never a job for me when I started doing the coaching for Reframe. It truly was something that I did to give back. And I'm a huge empath. So these people that would come in and share their life with me, I felt so much joy. Not because they were struggling, but because they were able to trust me with their stuff. And if I helped any of them, I mean, I always said, I just want to help one. And if I helped any of them, then, that was a blessing on top of a blessing. And I really think that I got fed way more than I ever was able to go out and help. It just was a wonderful experience.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's the societal dehumanization of people who struggle or don't conform that really, really, I think is the most detrimental to anyone. My brother actually has a job very similar to what you volunteered for. So he is in Texas, in Dallas, and he heads up 2 or 3 hospitals, and he runs the intake. So anyone who calls and is trying to get into detox, and he was in active addiction for 20 years, and he's been sober almost 5 years now. And he loves it. He can't imagine doing anything else. And so to see that too, like, this community was here for me, helped save my life, and giving that back. I mean, he went and made a whole career out of it. And that's the beautiful thing, right?
Yeah.
When help people. I mean, that's how we all get better, is together. So that's wonderful. So are you still coaching now?
I haven't been coaching with Reframe since May, but I do take on individual clients. My husband and I have our own business, and I kind of thought that I would back away from the business and, kind of let my kids step up and let that grow naturally and kind of let me transition out. But I haven't been able to. We're actually growing, which is a blessing. We're doing really well, and they needed me. And I also thought that once I became an empty nester, that my kids wouldn't really need me that much, and they have, which that has been a joy. That they still are, they still are including me in their life. So I haven't been able to do things that are, where you have to be somewhere at a certain time. I do really good at things where I can just pop in and help. So now I joined a new church, and I'm doing some stuff with them, and I still do the clients, on an individual basis. Normally it's somebody that I can see at 6 a.m. because I'm just that kind of early person.
Still that early riser.
Yeah. And I still meet up with the Reframe people. I mean, we just had, 17 or 18 of us that came here to Cleveland, and I just got together with a group of 8 of them in New York. And I think I've met about 27 in person now from the Reframe organization. A couple of the get-togethers I got to host or co-host. I was able to get them all here for the eclipse, which was amazing. That's all been this year. And I mean, it's like you talk about people are like, well, we don't have anyone close by that we're friends with. Well, I was lucky because I had the coaches that were nearby me. But I mean, the people that were I'm closest to from the organization are in Canada. They're in Virginia. They're in South Dakota or South Carolina. They're not They're not local. And I would say that, that they are some of the closest friends I've ever had. They are just amazing people. Amazing. And it just goes to show you that there's too much preconceived bias when it comes to people that have some form of issue with drugs or alcohol. And I say both because, there's both out there. And, a lot of people have self-medicated with cannabis for years and have discovered that that's a problem also. And it's everywhere. It really is. It's your next door neighbor. It's your brother. It's your dad. It's your best friend. There's just, it's not something that we sat down and said, yes, Lord, please make me an addict, or please make me, somebody that has a gray area drinking, or we didn't ask for that. We sure the hell didn't want that in our life, but we have it now. And now it's our responsibility to try to do something about it. And if we can get out of that and step away from it, then I totally believe it's our, we got to pass that on. We got to lift somebody else up, and that's what you guys are doing. I love this.
Yeah, that's why, that's what I was going to speak to that. I've been very sober out loud after, it took me 100 days. And then I just laid it out. I thought, screw it. I'm going to let everybody know and see what happens. Because it was a really scary moment. I mean, when you make that, that first post.
Oh, yeah.
I almost like to call it, so you it's coming out basically to everybody. Like, hey, I'm a sober guy now. This is me, take it or leave it. And the amount of love that came in, to this day blows my mind. The amount of people that reached out and said, wow, that's amazing. I feel like I have a problem too.
Yeah.
That people I never knew, battled similar demons, and they're still doing it today, but maybe in a different way, because sometimes they reach out to me, which is just blows my mind, and I'm happy to help. The podcast, has been great for me, as you and I talked about yesterday. If I just change one person's life or make them think different or reach out to somebody for help, realize they're not alone, to me is huge.
Yeah.
Giving back to this community is what I'm all about. I'm like you. It fills my heart more helping somebody. Huge. I can't even explain it. I don't know what it is. It's such love seeing, seeing people thrive of maybe something I said or we did on the podcast, something like that. Just, I love it. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah. And, I was the same. I didn't tell anyone for a while, except for my inner circle. Some of my friends, I said I was doing sober January or dry January with David. And that's kind of how we backed away from our big drinking friend group for that first month. But 90 days, I was myself and another reframe person. We put on I was going into graduation party season because I had a senior. So I just put right on there. I said, I am choosing to not drink alcohol anymore. It doesn't serve me. I find it to just bring out negative in my personality. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And I just put it on right on the Facebook, and then off I roll. And there was quite a few people that behind the scenes said, I don't drink either. And, that are, what did you do? How did you do it? And I took to reframe because I do think that has been a successful tool. But what started it for me was I went to, there's still an organization. They still do these called Zero Proof. And I was able to meet a bunch of them in Texas. I went to Texas. That was my first one. And I met 2 or 3 people. And then we came back from that. And then I'm like, okay, we're going to do a local one. And we did. I have one of the coaches that's no longer with Reframe. She and her family own a deli in Westlake. It's Layman's Deli. And she let us use the whole upstairs every time we did one of these things. And, people died. Gosh, this last one, we had people coming in from Washington and New York and Texas. They were just, every time I turned around, there's another person saying they're flying into Cleveland. And I was speechless when we finally got to the place where we were eating. I was like, I just can't, I can't believe that you're all here.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And it really it really highlights the difference, right? Like you're like, I feel like these people, I've known them for years. It's because it is an authentic relationship.
Yeah.
Right? Like we have relationships with people in our lives and they all serve a purpose. Anytime someone asks it, like couples advice from us, which we really prefer not to give because we are not perfect. I'm like, well, we don't expect each other to satiate every single need. Like that is just an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
You have friends at work and friends at church, and you have school friends and even just acquaintances. And though those smaller relationships, you may not think you're getting most out of them, they are 100% filling a cup inside of you that you desperately need. And it's the same thing with these, right? Like these are people who you share this bond with, and you have quite literally stripped yourself almost naked in front of them and allowed them to like just inspect every piece of you inside out. And that provides a certain vulnerability that connects you with these people. So my proposition, I'm sitting here as I do with my ADHD, and my mind's just like ticking as you guys are talking. And I'm like, okay, so one of two things need to happen. We either need to buy like an RV and do like a cross country reframe road trip, or we need to do like a Costa Rica retreat, where we like pool money and just rent out a resort and everybody fly down there and have like a big reframe retreat. I have no idea how any of that would happen, but in my head, in my imagination, it's a fantastic idea.
It just does. It's so funny because like the ones, the zero proof experiences, Peggy and Susie that do that, they just had, last summer they had it in Bali. So, you just do. And that is a little bit more of a, an extensive where they plan everything. But this one we did here in Cleveland that was for the eclipse, I had them here. See, I think they came in like Friday to Tuesday, and we did a 5K because one of them's a runner, and we did a whole day at the eclipse. That was in and of itself was something I'll probably never see again as long as I live.
Right.
We did Subway sandwiches and we took walks, and it was just very organic, and it was not like where you have to do minute to minute. So we say, hey, we're going to Costa Rica in May. Buy your ticket. You're staying at this hotel, and that's just how it goes. And they come because
just show up. Just show up, and we can figure it out at that point.
I like the road trip idea too, because like that could be our 2025 like goal for us, is to be like, we're gonna travel at some point all the way across the country and back. We can call it the Sober as Fuck Tour. Right. And we literally just like meet up with reframers, and people can come. Hey,
I like it.
This is almost as good as idea. My little girl diary for Christmas for journals. I don't know if you've watched that podcast, but we were talking, and I thought that it would be a great idea to create journals and make them like the little ones that we had when we were like little girls, with like the water in front and all the frilly little things, and even a cheap little lock that you eventually have to break open because you lost the key. Maybe that's what we can do. I can create the journals, and then we'll just like hand them out on our cross country. Sorry, I way squirreled there, but such is my brain. But I love that. I haven't been to a reframe meetup per se, but like I have met up with some of the reframe people, like when we were in Dallas, and I'm forever eternally grateful that Ryan has that. I know that it is a blessing and a lifesaver that you have a community of people you can go to. And I've said it a million times, you can always come and talk to me. But it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same. I love you and I know parts of you better than anyone else, but I will never, ever understand what it feels like to struggle with those things. I have my own struggles, but I'll never understand that. So the fact that you found a community that you can share that with, I think is just the most beautiful thing in the world.
I do too. I mean, it really is special, and you just don't realize it until you're in it. Because like my husband and I, we actually did one of the meetings together as a couple where I don't drink and he does, and he did great. And then he was listening to my speaker share, and he goes, "You are a different person with them than I've ever seen you be." And I said, "Well, honey," I said, "that's because I'm me. I'm me. You guys loved me as me, and I loved you as you, and it just was. That's how it was."
Well, and your primary role in that environment is not wife, right? It goes back to after we had our daughter. She's 13 now, but I stayed home with her for 18 months just because I worked in nonprofit healthcare for 13 years. So not this particular world, but nonprofit acts of service world is my jam. Like when we first met, I was like, I am so glad that you have a full blown career because I'm just going to work in nonprofit, make no money for the rest of my life. And you're in this world now too. And you see how even self-serving it is. But he was like, you can go back to work if you want to, but all it's going to do is pay for daycare. So I thought, well, I'll just stay home. There's no reason to worry about it. But when she turned about a year old is when I looked at him and I was like, listen, I have got to find a job. And it's not that I don't love you. It's not that I don't love our daughter, but I have to have an environment where I am not a mother. I am not a wife. I am not a sister. I am not a daughter. I'm not even a friend. I need to have something that I get up and go to that I am creating and building something for others, for myself, for selfless and selfish reasons, something that is solely for me, that these other roles, it's not that they don't play into it because they all kind of commingle. But when I go to work, I'm not, worried about the familial part of things. And it's sort of that same thing, right? Like you go to reframe and you're like, of course I'm a different person because that's a different part of me. I'm not your wife in that moment. I'm not a mom. I'm not a grandmother. I am sober Shannon coach sharing the most vulnerable parts of myself. Yeah. So of course it's going to come off as different. And I think that is important that everyone, no matter struggles or not, have those roles within their lives. I mean, it does worlds for your mental health.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, finding Reframe and finding you all is just been about one of the best things, that I could have had happen for me. And I'm lucky, I always say, I wish I would have done this when I was 20 or when I was 30 but no, because that could have impacted some of the things that I have that are such blessings now. But, I'm 51 now and I get to have this for the rest of my life. It happened when it was supposed to happen. And like I told you, there was a lot of curves and roundabouts for me until I, came to Jesus literally and decided I was going to be this, this new, what one of our reframers always says 2.0, this new Shannon 2.0,
yeah,
this new version
That's right.
of me here on out.
I love that. That reminds me a lot of my brother too.
Yeah.
I'll talk to him about where he was in his active addiction. And he says, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was the best thing it saved my life. It taught me so many things and it allowed me to not only just get sober, but I am legitimately a better person, a more compassionate person, a kinder person, a person with more faith, a more thoughtful person, a more intentional person. It didn't just save my life. It set the foundation for a whole new life that I didn't even know was waiting for me.
Right.
So that's very empowering to hear.
Yeah.
So we'll get you out of here on a couple questions. Okay. First, what would you say to somebody new, just starting out, maybe 30, 60, really hasn't decided, what route they want to go, but they know they have an issue? wanting to quit, what would you say to that person today?
I always say that when you are on this journey, we are all here on this beam, this beam of our use of alcohol, how much we drink. A lot of it depends on where they're at on that beam. You know, we have the person that, you know, has a drink at a reception once a year, and then we have those that can't function without. I'm thinking that they're above half. Okay, we're talking about somebody that's past the halfway on this beam of where their spectrum is. And there's a couple things that they're not going to really like that I'm going to tell them. And number one is, this is going to be it for a bit. The way that this works is you do the work. It doesn't take 5 minutes a day. I mean, I was in there for 2 hours a day, you know, doing podcasts, listening, being on a meeting. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And they need to know that going in. It's not just, you just snap your fingers and say, I'm not drinking. No, it doesn't. That's not a long term. And, you know, a hobby is wonderful. I worked puzzles and did P&P, puzzles podcast, during that time when I normally would be making a cocktail or having a glass of wine. That's when I went to the puzzles and the podcast, do something that interacts with your hands, your mind, your vision, you know, all your senses, and get a coach. I didn't have a reframe coach, but I joined a Holy Healthy Christian Moms group, like right at the beginning of all this. And I had different things that they had different things, but I was able to weekly bring it to the table. If you have a coach, just even for 30 days, 60 days, where you can kind of bounce stuff back and forth, it's an investment that, you know, it's really priceless. I'm not just saying that because I am one. It is it's invaluable. And find one person that, you know, you could say, but at the end of the day, I didn't drink today. Or, oh my gosh, today sucked real bad. Or maybe you did drink, but that's okay because you have tomorrow. And maybe that is your coach if you don't have anyone else around you. But if you can find an accountability person, I would say those 4 things would be, you know, the best.
I love it.
I love that advice too.
Yes.
I think that's great. I love the brutal honesty in the beginning. I think that people are scared of making anything negative because they're like, oh, if I, and this extends outside of just sobriety, like, oh, if I start off with a negative, then it's going to push people away. Well, it's not your responsibility to pull or push people.
That's right.
That's on
Just
them.
tell them how it is.
It's your, you know, something that Kayla Lyon says in her books that really resonated with me is that I'm not trying to tell anyone they shouldn't drink. I'm not trying to tell anyone that they should get sober. I just simply think that we should be providing accurate information and education to people about the truth behind drinking and drugs and what it does to you on like a chemical level. I think that people should be able to make informed consent. And I think it plays straight into that. Like, listen, you need to be informed about what you are saying you want to do. And what you do with that information is on you. But we know that when people have the information and access, not always, but most of the time, they typically do good things with it, even if it's not immediately. Yeah. So that's great. I love that.
And we'll get you out of here with one last question, the hardest hitting question that we ask every podcast.
She already knows. I can tell that.
And you're going to have to dig deep. So you got to go way back, back in your drinking days, maybe in your 20s. But
okay.
You got to tell me a funny pee story.
Okay.
There's got to be.
I got one. It's going to really make me seem a little bit like an airhead, but I'm bringing it out there. So one of the things we did when we were younger, I grew up in the country, and there was a lot of riding around on the back roads with your cooler. And the first time I know that's very bad. I realize that. But one of the first times I went out with my friends, and I was riding around with the cooler, I had to go to the bathroom. And so, you know, we're in the country. People do not care about pulling over to the side of the road. I mean, nobody sees. It's in the dark. But I was so naive that I was like, I can't do it. I said, if the cops come, they'll be able to test it and they'll know I've been drinking. They're like, Shannon, what are you going to do? You think it's going to glow in the dark? I'm like, no, but the cops are coming. I just know it. I really was afraid to go. I thought for sure I'd get busted. I was young. I was probably 15 back then, so it wasn't like I was like 30. I would say that was probably my best one.
I love that.
I like that.
From a fellow country girl, Ryan got to see firsthand over the summer exactly where I grew up, and I literally took him down a back road that he's like, if this tears my car up, I'm going to be pissed. I stand in solidarity. It was nothing for my grandmother when I'd be like, I have to pee, to just pull over on the side of the highway and pee in the road. There were probably 3 other people doing the exact same thing.
That's right.
I'm glad you didn't get arrested, Shannon. I'm glad the cops did not find you.
No glow in the dark.
No glow in the dark.
Blue light.
No glow in the dark pee.
Shannon did this on the side of the road.
I love it. I love it. I love it. You know, the girls, I say this every time. Every time we ask a girl, give me your best pee story, they have one like that. They're like, oh my God, which one do I pick? The guys, they're like, I pee sober on everything. So I don't know. I love it. That's a great one.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for joining the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for asking me. Soon. I was honored.
Of course. It was wonderful having you on, Shannon. We will talk.
If you love the podcast, which I know you do, please like, subscribe,
and hit that notification bell to get notified every time we post.
That's right. Dropping them, baby. Word.